Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. This one brought to you in part by Belmont Watches. Thank you to the team over at Belmont, located in San Diego, for lending this watch into the channel. This is a Seiko, a little bit about the brand. Founded back in 1881. They're Japanese in origin, but now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end, and this is definitely one of their more higher end premium offerings. In terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this, an everyday watch, maybe an everyday dress watch. So you're looking for that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes, but I think this one's definitely more leaning on the dressy side, especially considering the lack of lume. This is the Presage model SPB293, and it's in this beautiful Hakuji or pure white Arita porcelain dial. And essentially Arita porcelain is prized for its unique blue and white colors, white in this case, and it is among the classic expressions of Japanese artistry showcased in the Presage craftsmanship series. And essentially it's used to create high strength three-dimensional dials, and these are individually crafted by master artisans in a multi-step process, combining technical innovation with centuries of inspiration. And this is not a cheap piece, brand new at list price. You can get these for $1,700, or you can get this particular unit from Belmont Watches in San Diego for $1,550. So you got a nice little savings there. This thing is really cool. So I'm excited to, I'm sure some of you guys have already noticed, this is a no date watch. Everybody complains about, I wish there was a no date. I wish they made that a no date. When will people listen? Here is a no date, beautiful no date watch. So what's your excuse now? So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, now as you can see, really gorgeous piece. You've probably seen this case style and bracelet before from the brand. This definitely kind of has the Sark style from a few years back before the sharp edge was released. But now the main event here is this beautiful dial. Yes, we've seen enamel dials and porcelain dials before, but this is a no date, which is fantastic. It still manages to have a cool 3D nature. You can see that kind of center section there that is sunk in, whereas the outer section is slightly raised with kind of a bubble. So you get a little bit of a 3D effect there to those Roman numerals, which are just, my gosh, those are excellently crafted. You guys can see they're really beautiful. In terms of the dimensions here, this is 40.8 millimeters in diameter, but it wears pretty much like a 40 would. And again, like you've seen in the past from Seiko's line in terms of some of the older Sarks models, it's 12.5 millimeters thick, which isn't bad, especially considering Seiko and all their tricks that they use to make the watches appear thinner. A lot of it has to do with the beautiful sculpting and undercutting that you're going to see here. The high polished sides, it really helps blend those things away while on the wrist. In terms of lug to lug, it's 48.6, but there is a nice, you can see a little sweep down to those lugs, so it's not like it juts out or anything. And even though it does have male end links, you can also see that that center kind of T-shape doesn't protrude too far out, and then also it has a really nice slope to it. So actually, let me wipe off some of the fingerprints here off camera, because this thing is really well finished. And yes, it's it's not brand spanking new, but the nice thing is, any little imperfections, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about being the first one to smudge or to scar this one up. Although I will say it looks like it has minimal wear from this standpoint. And for the type of watch, I would expect it to be somewhat in this type of condition where it looks pretty new, but it's not completely sterile, perfect finish on some of those high polished surfaces. Now, Getting into the details here, of course, it's a push-pull crown, but it is signed. That's just something that's unique to the Presage line in terms of signed crowns versus if you were to go into, let's say, the Prospex line, you wouldn't be getting signed crowns. And the movement inside is an automatic Seiko 6R31 no-date movement. The last time we saw this movement was the watch it was debuted in, which was the King Seiko line, so the reissue line, so that was really exciting. So it's great to see this movement make it out to other watches, right? It's still quite expensive, but it does also have that great dial. So there's a trade-off there, but the movement, just like you'd expect, 70-hour power reserve, 3 hertz sweep, so that's 6 ticks per second, or 21,600 vibrations per hour. It does have a Sprawn 510 mainspring, which does help also with anti-magnetic properties. Now, and of course, it all is available to look at through the display case back. Now, getting into this beautiful dial, it's this gorgeous 3-dimensional, I mentioned the Hakuji Arita porcelain dial, so pure white Arita porcelain, and it is gorgeous. I mean, this thing, just the dial alone is probably the cost of admission, and I think it's kind of worth it, to be totally honest. This dial is something to really behold. I mean, hopefully the camera is able to capture some. I'm going to get it really as close as possible so you guys can just understand the beautiful luster and just the fine craftsmanship of this porcelain dial is next level, guys. It's really gorgeous. And then the fact that you can get it on a steel bracelet, very cool, because normally you'd see this type of stuff on a leather strap, and you could easily swap it to a leather strap because it does have 20mm lugs. But back to the details here. I love how they executed the Roman numeral index there. It's also in a dark blue tone in terms of the paint. So, I mean, some really, really fine artisanship there, the execution, and it still does have, of course, the full minute track, which is nice because, it has a hacking movement, so it's nice to be able to hack the movement very precisely in terms of your timekeeping. So I also can absolutely appreciate that very, very much. This thing is just really, really impressive, and I have to say that I wish I could actually get it on the wrist for you guys, but honestly, the last owner had this thing sized pretty tiny, so this isn't gonna go on my 7.5-inch wrist. It looks like it's sized for maybe a 6-inch wrist, but the good news is the guys at Belmont do have all of the extra links. I didn't want to mess with the links because it is pin and collar, just to size it up for the video. But I will say again, this is a very similar size. They're not doing anything revolutionary. This is the same case style and size proportions in terms of dial and bezel ratio that you would get again from those previous Sarks models. But those blue hands are nice. It looks like they are coated. As you can see, they don't look like they're thermally blued. I wouldn't expect them to be unless it was some special edition. Typically, the thermally blued hands would be reserved for either Grand Seiko level or a special edition flavor. So unfortunately, that is one of the drawbacks you can see here. But I will say aesthetically, the blue coating that they use is still actually really, really nice. It's just one of those things. It's like applied indices versus printed. Typically you're going to want something that's applied, and yeah, typically you would want it thermally blued versus coated. But hey, speaking of applied versus printed indices, here are some printed indices that are amazing. So again, there's always a different use case and a way to look at it. Another nice thing is that although this is super elegant in terms of the style, it does still offer you 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance, which is fantastic. And that's, of course, as long as this push-pull crown is pushed in. But I think it's going to be pretty easy to do that. Keep that pushed in there because it doesn't have any crown guards or anything. So you can just, it's pretty obvious when you have it in or not. We can pull out here. Actually, that's not even out. That's just there we go. So you can see with it pulled out, then pushed in. There's no ghost position or anything like that. Really nice winding action. I don't really get into that too much unless it's something that really bothers me. But you know, this is very smooth. I do like the size and the ability, the tactile engagement of getting to that crown. This bracelet, like I mentioned, 20 millimeters, and then it does have a nice taper down to 18, and you are getting 2 half links for sizing, and it does use a pin and collar system. So since we're not going to put it on the wrist because it is too small, I guess I could lay it on the wrist, and you guys could see that, and you can see that's pretty much how it would roll. Very nice, very handsome. I think the real thing here, again, this isn't treading any new ground in terms of the bracelet and the case. It's really the fact that you can see how beautiful this dial is with the no date configuration. You also saw that there's no ghost position, so this is a cool one. But what we'll do is we'll just jump straight into the low light transition since there is no loom. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, no loom, but one thing I always like to do is work in that low light transition because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or maybe just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree or spending some time in your favorite automobile. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to even include some harsh lighting like you can see here, which typically would expose any type of defects or anything like that. But you can see very uniform in terms of the way that the light glides over that nice brushing and the lustrous, deep, high polish there. But the great thing to notice is actually how legible, like check that out. There's not a lot of light, but you can still, of course, if the camera will stay focused, you can still see that dial, right? It's just does a really smart job playing with the light. You can see, of course, in direct light, still great high contrast. The blues just pop here and there, so it's not really in your face. I really do like how subtle that is. But you can really see the 3D nature of this dial and how it just has that little raised section that has a beautiful slope to it there that just kind of sticks out. And then you have, of course, that little drop in the center where you'd have the great, the text and everything there just balancing the dial out. This is just such a handsome piece. I really, really do like the way this looks. And of course, I would be total with a larger wrist like mine. I'm one of the people that's totally fine with the way that it wears as well. But honestly, judging by the size of the bracelet, somebody with a really, really small wrist was wearing this thing, at least for a little while. But I would definitely say, 7-inch wrist and above will probably be more comfortable with this, whereas anybody below a 7-inch wrist is probably going to be, they're going to have to really, really like this watch. And I know a lot of times you can just like the way a watch looks, but in terms of the way it wears when it's on the wrist is going to depend, it'll decide how often you actually wear it and if you get your money's worth out of it. The good news is you can save quite a bit. $15.50 again from Belmont Watches in San Diego, which is awesome. So in terms of the closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, the dial to case dimensions and proportions are definitely very reminiscent of past Sarks models. In terms of model variations, I believe you can get this watch with, on a strap, but it's not like, they're doing one that has red dial or, anything like that. Like, this is pretty much what you can get, but I think it's totally worth it. And it's one of the things that was always kind of a drawback with previous enamel and porcelain dials is the way the date windows look. They look really, really rough on those types of dials, which is kind of an eyesore. So to have it in a no date variation, it just, it takes away that idea of putting a blemish on such a perfectly executed dial. So it's just gorgeous. In terms of comparable models, I think the 37 millimeter King Seiko reissue, which is too small for some, with the same movement, definitely comes to mind, considering you're getting something very classic. You can get it on the steel bracelets. Otherwise, you could easily compare this aesthetic to many Swiss offerings, many that have similar Roman numeral layouts, minus, of course, the glorious porcelain dial that you're going to see here. And in those cases, you know, and when you start getting into the higher range of, let's say, Longines or anything like that, then the prices are going to be quite comparable. The beat rate is going to be quite comparable. Extended power reserve, right? You probably get a Powermatic 80. It's going to have 10 more hours of power reserve, but it's still going to be slowing down in terms of that beat rate. It's going to be 3 hertz also. And, you know, those are more group watches versus this being an independent, you know, fully integrated in-house, you know, type of affair, which I think is definitely very admirable. So for me, guys, bottom line, for all the times I've read in the comments, if only this didn't have a date, you know, here's an excellent, you know, here's an excellent no date option that could easily be dressed up or dressed down to suit most any occasion, barring, you know, dedicated sportswear. I could see this on a multitude of different types of straps, whether it just be a very basic brown brown leather strap of dark or light tones, super casual dressed down, or you could put it on something like a black lizard skins with some gloss on it, or, you know, simulated crocodile, alligator. Really, really dress this piece up, and I think it would just look gorgeous. You know, or maybe somewhere in between, you go with like a blue, dark navy blue Horween strap, you know, with a vintage side stitch or something like that. And this one's a really cool one. I really dig this one. I think the price is going to be prohibitive for a lot of folks. But I mean, again, it's what you have to it's the price point of entry to get that no date movement, as well as this beautiful porcelain dial. So sure, you can get other things that might look like this and might feel like this, you know, from afar. But this dial and, you know, hopefully the camera was able to do it some justice. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.